So back in August of 2023, Microsoft announced the Xbox 360 store closure would be occurring in July of next year. And that is about 10 or so months from now as of the making of this episode. And I think it's a good time to remind everyone that while you can continue to play your games from your digital library, over time, some of these games will get delisted due to licensing issues and you'll never be able to play them again. Which brings me to the topic of today's episode. I think now, more than ever, is a good time to jump into the 360 ecosystem and get a hold, or do it yourself depending on your skill level, of a hacked Xbox 360. Game preservation doesn't get any better than owning a modded Xbox 360, let me tell you, and I'm going to show you what you can do with one in today's episode. Now, it is important to discuss this before we really jump in. In recent times, when we talk about hacking systems, it's purely from a software perspective, or soft modding as it's called. Systems like the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Nintendo Switch can all be hacked without requiring any type of hardware modification. But when we talk about the Xbox 360, the only way to circumvent its security is to perform a hardware modification. The RGH or Reset Glitch Hack and JTAG mods are the only ways to properly hack an Xbox 360 console. And to perform either of these hacks, you'll need to learn how to solder, or at least send it to someone that can mod the console for yourself. Of course, this can turn some people away. However, there are eBay listings out there where you can pick up a pre-modded RGH 360. They're very common to buy depending on the condition of the Xbox 360 itself, but I just did want to give this quick disclaimer before we jumped in. Now, the first obvious thing that you can do with a modded Xbox 360 is install a custom dashboard, and this is something that I recommend to anyone that is looking to mod their Xbox 360. And the dashboard that you want to look at, especially in 2023, is known as Aurora. Now, Aurora has been around for quite a few years now, and previously it was known as Freestyle Dash, but it has evolved since then. But Aurora really is the optimal custom dashboard that you'll ever need for your Xbox 360. And there are a lot of features of what Aurora can do. The first thing is obviously you can have a really nice custom theme with like different views of the way that you want to present your games, which is really, really cool. It's a different departure from obviously the original Xbox dashboards that we've seen over the years. But more importantly, there are some really cool features to allow you to preserve your game library. The first one being the option to rip your games from disk onto your hard drive. Now, of course, you can do this with a retail Xbox 360. However, the retail Xbox 360 requires you to have a copy of the physical disk in the drive at all times. And this is probably due to wanting to do some type of license check before you can actually launch the game. With a modded Xbox 360, you can simply rip the entire contents of your game to hard disk, launch the game. You don't need the disk anymore, and this is great for people that want to preserve their games or they're collectors of physical media. You install it once and you never need to re-download or reinstall that game ever again. And what's even cooler with the Aurora dashboard is that you can optionally, you don't have to do this, you can optionally also apply the title updates or patches, and you can basically launch the game with any version that is available out there. So if there were 5 separate updates to a certain game, then you can launch any of those 5 particular updates yourself. Now, you may be wondering, why would you want to do this? Well, in some instances, there are games out there that have features taken away, or maybe there was a reason why you want to play the original version of a game because some feature or something had changed over time. So this really gives you the flexibility and option to basically play the game however you want to play them. And to add to this, you can also obviously run DLC that is a part of the game as well, and you can also optionally enable or disable DLC packages. So basically what we're talking about here is preserving the entire Xbox 360 library with a modded Xbox or a hacked Xbox 360. But going even further than this, you can also have a FTP server where you can move files back and forth from your Xbox 360 to your PC or to your Mac. And this is obviously also very important if you want to install things like Homebrew, emulators, and ROMs, which we're certainly going to get to as well. Now, as far as hard drive storage, you can have up to 2 terabytes of storage on any of the drives that you use. So with your internal storage, you can have a 2 terabyte drive. You can also have 2 terabyte external USB drives. So you can basically basically store a very, very large portion, I think probably the entire portion of Xbox 360 games on a hacked 360. Now, another huge reason why you want a hacked Xbox 360 is to play region-free games. This may not sound like a big deal, but let me tell you it is. It's really annoying to go to a store, especially if you're on holidays, maybe you're somewhere else, you're overseas, and you buy games, and then you want to play them on your console when you get home, and you can't because you are locked out from the particular region of the game. Now, this is not something that occurs anymore in video games, but during the days of the PS3, the Xbox 360 era, having region lock games was a big deal, and it was very annoying. So having region-free games at your disposal means that you have the pick of any Xbox 360 game that was ever released in any country in the world. This also includes the Japanese exclusive cave shoot 'em up games that I'm really a big fan of myself. And there are some, games that were locked to specific regions that were never released in other regions. And now you have full access to play all those games on a hacked Xbox 360. Now, some of you may be thinking to yourself at this point, why bother with all this? Why don't just you use an Xbox Series X and use the backward compatibility program that's been provided to you? Well, the backward compatibility of games on the Xbox Series and the Xbox One is a very good thing. Please don't get me wrong, but unfortunately it doesn't cover anywhere near the complete list of games. Nowhere near the complete list of games. In fact, if you take a look at this list from True Achievements, you can see that all these games here do not run on the Xbox Series via backward compatibility. And this is a huge list of games. And some of these games, I might add, have also been delisted, which means that you can never purchase and play these games ever again. But the good news is, with a hacked Xbox 360, you can simply download these games. You can simply basically revive these games and play them to your heart's content. There are complete archives of all this stuff available to you online. I'm certainly not here to tell you where to download this stuff, but this stuff is available to you, and they can be installed on any hacked Xbox 360, and you can simply preserve the entire library of Xbox 360 games once again. Now, speaking of backward compatibility, the Xbox 360 does allow you to play half of the OG Xbox catalog via the software backward compatibility that has been provided. Now, this particular feature is quite cool because you can not only get access to a large library of your OG Xbox games, but with a hacked version of the emulator, you can basically whitelist the entire library of Xbox OG games to play on your Xbox 360. And we have covered this topic before, the emulation, the backward compatibility via emulation with OG Xbox games on the Xbox 360. And of course, there's going to be situations where these games don't run quite right, or there are some issues. But overall, this is a very cool feature, basically allowing you to preserve and play and even rip these OG Xbox games onto your Xbox 360 and have them available for you to play as well. I do think that it is worth checking out, but I will also be very clear in that your mileage may vary. Some games run very well, some games run near perfectly and flawlessly, but in other situations, games don't run quite as well. But this is a really fascinating insight to what Microsoft was doing even back in 2005, 2006, where they started to build up this backward compatibility emulation layer that is still going strong to this very day, which is really cool to see. And I think some of the things they were doing with the emulation for OG Xbox on the Xbox 360 is so fascinating. And just as a quick side note, I have talked about this on the channel before, and if you want to learn more about what Microsoft did to get OG Xbox games running on the Xbox 360, because I think going from PowerPC to x86 is something that is just technical wizardry, then check out my video in the description below, and I'll leave a card to it as well. We mentioned the custom dashboard and the ability to basically preserve the entire contents of your Xbox 360 games. And for most people, this is probably going to be enough. You have a really good console that still looks and plays amazing games to this day, but if you want to take things further, and some people do, then you may want to step into the world of homebrew and emulation. Now, I think it's fair to say that the homebrew and emulation scene on the Xbox 360 was nowhere near as prolific as the days of the OG Xbox. But with that said, there are still some really cool homebrew and emulators that I do recommend that you check out on the Xbox 360. And popular ones that I recommend is Super NES emulation, Game Boy Advance, as well as arcade emulation is very well covered on the Xbox 360. And what's even cooler about this is that if you have the backward compatibility emulator applied, the hacked version that basically whitelists any OG Xbox game to run on your Xbox 360, this allows you to play OG Xbox homebrew and emulators on your Xbox 360. This means that you can run an X68000 emulator that never was released for the Xbox 360, but it is available for the OG Xbox. And this also opens up the door for OG Xbox homebrew to run on the Xbox 360. Now, once again, because of the nature of the Xbox 360 emulator, it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to run, but I've run successfully OG Xbox homebrew on my Xbox 360, and I gotta say, this is a really cool feature. But I think what's important to really note here is that we're not really talking about modern emulation where you can run PlayStation 2 and Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 3 games. This is going back to, circa 2007 to like 2012 timeframe. So we shouldn't expect the world here, but the way that I really like to think about it is with a hacked Xbox 360 and having your emulators and homebrew installed, and having your Xbox 360 games and having your OG Xbox games installed, this really does complement each other extremely well. And all of a sudden, an Xbox 360 is just an absolute powerhouse of a system when it comes to playing games, because you have this huge selection of games that you can play from, and you can also just basically jump in and play old retro games as well without having to do any other modifications. Now, I think the last thing that I do want to mention is there's going to be some people out there that say, MVG, this is really cool, but why would you pick this over something like Xenia, a modern and popular Xbox 360 emulator that runs many Xbox 360 games, including Xbox Live Arcade titles, and it even runs Xbox 360 Homebrew that we were talking about in this episode? Well, I think for me, I don't necessarily have a preference as to how you should go. Some people do prefer emulation, modern emulation, over original hardware, and some people prefer original hardware over emulation. But I'm really here to tell you that I'm not here to advocate or, influence your decision one way or the other. It's really about choice. And having a modded Xbox 360 is a choice that is open to you should you decide to do it. And if you do decide to do it, then I'm basically here to tell you that it's a really good idea, and these are the reasons why. So I do hope that you took something away from today's episode. I think an Xbox 360 in 2023 and getting it modded for homebrew is an absolute no-brainer, and you should probably take a look at doing one yourself, unless you're more interested in the emulation side. But that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. I have had a hacked Xbox 360 pretty much since the first day that it opened up, and every so often I like to go back and revisit it and play some games on it, and I still just can't believe how amazing the system is all these years later. For me, the Xbox 360 is Microsoft's last best console, and some people may not agree with that, but that's how I personally feel. We're going to leave it here, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye for now.